Hi everybody, it's Linda. I am back and welcome. Thank you for joining me. I have two rose themed little cutie journals to share with you today. And if you're seeing this, then they are currently in my Etsy shop, Joyful Makes and Finds. So they are nearly identical, again, with just a few little minor differences. So I'll go through the first one in more detail and just flip through the second one. So this is going to be the first one, and I'm going to identify them in my shop as pink ties and ivory ties. So otherwise, they're very, very similar, so if not identical. All right, so on the cover, I used a vintage rose fabric, and it is a paper bag covered journal, which is how I classify my little cuties. They're about 6 inches tall by about 4.5 to 5 inches wide, and they have about 30 full pages, I'm sorry, 30 pages or about 62 sides each, approximately, give or take a few pages. So again, covered it with this pretty vintage rose fabric, covered the spine with some vintage lace. I used one of my own handmade little snippet pieces, and I made a little handmade lace rosette for the cover of each. And I added this little chain of gold chain with pearls to the bottom of the snippet, and the closure is a vintage rose button and an eyelet with some, on this one, pink vintage lace. Okay, so let me make sure I'm in frame well here. And okay, so I created a side pocket with the fabric in the cover, and inside is this pretty rose, handmade rose envelope with a letter from me inside. I covered the inside of the covers with some vintage wallpaper, so these covers are very sturdy. Even though it's a paper bag, it has fabric on one side and wallpaper on the other, so it's a nice thickness. This is a scrapbook paper here, and I have a pocket here with a little handmade tag, partially handmade tag, and I covered the back with some vintage ledger for journaling. Coffee dyed paper, a fabric flip with a fun, this is one of my favorite, I say that about every fabric, I realize, but I love fabric, especially vintage fabric, but I love this black with these roses. My husband and I, back in the, I guess it was about the late 80s, we had a bedroom that was done, I think the walls were painted maybe like a sagey green, and I had a trim, you know, those were the days of the wallpaper border trim that had these black, it was a black background with these roses, and everything in the bedroom was done in black and green and rose, and I loved it. It's definitely out of style now, but that is that sweet vibe that this fabric gives me. So anyway, I digress. This is a vintage rose trim, Venice trim over a little bit of vintage flat lace, and a bulb pin. Excuse me, I'm gonna cough. That says handmade with love, and this is a flip. You can journal underneath. This is a rose digital from dearjuliejulie that you'll see throughout the journals. This is a vintage, very vintage ledger from 1913, maybe. It's an excellent shape. This is a little belly band that I embellished, and I put this piece of seed paper in it. There's an Etsy shop that I will credit where I purchased these little bits of seed paper, and I love them. You can plant this directly in the soil and little wildflowers will grow. So in the paper is just beautiful. So I love putting that in a journal when it's appropriate, and it just seemed to match beautifully in here. So you can either keep it and enjoy it, or you can plant it. This is some a really pretty dyed pink paper that I got from an Etsy shop, and I will credit that in the description box. Some vintage scrapbook paper. This is a paper bag that I made into a two-way pocket here. It's got just a, if I can get to it, it's got just a plain blank tag in there for you to use, and it has a journaling thing, a journaling paper that says things to remember. So there's a tuck here, and then this little paper bag, the bottom of the paper bag is a pocket, and I made this little tag to go inside of it. This sweet little girl holding roses. Okay, some vintage loose leaf, coffee dyed loose leaf. Some of my favorite, this is a scrapbook paper that I've had in my stash forever and didn't want to use because it's just sweet. But I finally decided this was the perfect journal. Trying not to save things like this forever because it doesn't, I feel like I can share the beauty of a favorite paper by making a journal out of it, but when it's in my containers, nobody gets to enjoy it really. So that's kind of something I'm trying to do more of this year, is to use some of those beloved papers and such. Okay, and this page is one of my favorite things to make. It is called Woven Pockets. Woven Pockets maybe. And I got this idea from Gail Augustinelli, and she has videos in her on her channel that show how to make this, and I will put a link to one of them in the description box. So it is a 4-way pocket made from, well, really a 5-way, made from woven strips of paper, and in this case I used some vintage music paper, and then tucked in each slat is a little one of the dearjuliejulie rose digitals that I made into a tag. And then in the top pocket I made this larger journal card, and I attached some of my favorite, I'm also a knitter, some of my favorite sock yarn I used for the ties on these little tags because I thought the colors matched. Okay, so this side is vintage. Okay, the vintage music paper. This is a page from a 1940s yearbook that I like to use, and more of that pink dyed paper. This is a paper bag that has, I made a belly band from avocado dyed paper on this side with a journaling card. And on the back side of this paper bag is a little collage with some Tim Holtz ladies and a vintage playing card that has those beautiful roses on black that I just love, and I thought that looked really pretty tucked in here. Some vintage scrapbook paper. I'm probably, as I talk, I'm probably scooting myself further up and out of sight, so I apologize. I'll try to keep an eye on that. And this is the center of the signature. It is a partial sheet from a vintage gardening book, and it is the page about roses. And it has, I kind of liked this because it had names of different kinds of roses in there. And then I just put a vintage doily in the center, and then as I do, I beaded the signature ties with some coordinating pretty beads. This one, I don't know if you can tell, but it's like an ivory colored bead that has rose, that's carved like a rose, and I just love that. And some other pretty rose seed beads and pearls, and just some pretty beads. I love to use my beads in my journals and to coordinate those colors. That just is something that kind of makes my heart sing. This is a Tim Holtz rose die cut on the back side of this paper bag, and I attached a pearl and a little crystal and to this paper clip. And inside is a organic rose herbal tea bag for you to enjoy. It smells so beautiful when it's brewing. So I'm gonna attach this later because I will fiddle with paper clips during a flip through. That is my MO. Some lined coffee dyed paper on the back of this beautiful digital. And now we are to some of the back sides of the signature pages, the vintage yearbook, vintage music. This is a little pocket. I created a side tuck here with some vintage lace and some vintage, it is vintage actually. I've had it, I don't know how many years, this scrapbook paper, but I took this pretty paper, I believe it is like one of those artist papers inside of a Somerset Studios magazine or whatever, and I embossed it with a rose embossing folder. I think it turned out really pretty. Okay. So this journal is not a Valentine's Day journal, but it's rose themed, so it's perfect for spring, for summer, for Valentine's Day, to give to a friend, to, you know, keep for yourself if you love roses. It would make a wonderful gratitude journal, just kind of an anytime journal. This is one of those multi-folded book page pockets, and I embellished it with some more of that pretty fabric and a vintage shell button. This little Create Joy ticket. This is just a little paper tag that you can use to add to something else. Just thought it looked really sweet in there. And in the back is a journaling card from the Dear Julie Rose Kit. And this really fun vintage, well, I guess this probably is vintage too. I think I've had it in my stash forever, but it's a paint sample that has granite and kind of sparkles, and I just added some journaling paper to the back, but it's really, really pretty. And I thought the color was just perfect for this journal. Okay. Lots of room, lots of blank pages just for journaling or doing your own thing, decorating. This is fun because I just learned this, and I may very well do some process videos with the Roxy's Weekly Challenge from Roxy Creations on Etsy. She's doing weekly challenges again this year with mass making ephemera, and I played along one day and I made this pocket that folds over a page, and it was made out of book pages. And inside of this first pocket here, I put just a rose envelope and some rose postage stamps. They're faux postage stamps. And then in the back pocket here is more of that pretty rose embossing that I did on just some coffee dyed cardstock. So I wanted to leave lots of plain things and include lots of things that you can work on your own. So this pocket folds over the page, so the exact same pocket is on the back. And in this pocket, I included 2 small little blank tags and a ticket. This is a project life card, so this comes out very bright, but I thought the colors were kind of fun in here. And it says my favorite day on the back, so you can see what the pocket looks like without anything in it. But I thought this was just kind of fun in there. A little bit bright, but fun. Sometimes you just like a pop of color. Okay. And then I made this little tag to go in the back with this fun rose. This lady dressed up like in a rose dress, quite literally. And I rubber stamped the back, added some of my favorite rose fabric washi to the back, and some hand-dyed seam binding topper. So that is the back page. This is that a kind of a better view of the vintage wallpaper that lines the book, and it covers this back large back pocket that right now is empty. And this is the back of the journal, just the solid rose. So with this, you will get a baggie filled with offcuts, little pieces of the fabrics and papers and things that I used in the journal. So I wanted to give you a close-up too of that pretty little vintage button that I used as the closure here. Okay, so this is the rose journal with the pink ties. Now I'm going to go through the second one more quickly. So it is basically very similar. I used ivory ties on this one, just so in case somebody is just not a huge fan of all the pink, and also, to be perfectly honest, that was the only little piece of that vintage pink trim I had, so I went with the ivory on this one, but otherwise the cover is the same with the handmade snippet and rose and the beads and the little vintage button. Okay. Now let's see if Linda can be quiet while she flips through this one. It's always a challenge, right? Sorry, always fidgety on camera with such things. Okay. Okay, this is Rose Journal 2 ivory ties in my Joyful Makes and Finds Etsy shop. These are the 2 of them. If you are interested, they are there and you can have a look. I am already at work on my little cuties for for March actually, and they are Irish themed, green themed, just really fun St. Patrick's Day kind of things. And I love to do that. I am Irish. I'm an interesting mix of half Irish and half Italian. So I love St. Patrick's Day was always a part of my growing up, the celebration of it. So I enjoy that. So anyway, and also I will make some that are just spring also. And I have a couple of neutral journals coming down the pike as well that are not seasonal or they're just kind of anytime journals. So I have a lot going on. I am going to try to make some videos of with the Roxy journals, Roxy's Creation weekly prompts, and hopefully you'll be seeing those shortly. And I really appreciate comments. Just let me know what you think. Let me know what you like, what you'd like to see, what you like to do, you know, what kind of journals you like to make, just whatever. But I love comments and likes and all of those things that help me to grow my little baby channel. So I appreciate you taking the time to look at the journals. Thank you so much. I send you lots and lots of love today. Bye, everybody.